students who cannot. So we have, it looks like pretty much every continent and dozens and dozens of countries. Very nice to see you all. So we have a very interesting special session today, a little bit different from our usual meetings with the companies. So today we have a guest speaker who is a business consultant, a coach, has rich corporate experience, and he was recommended by one of our professors, Daniel Roddick, who just showed up here. So Daniel himself is very actively involved in X-Culture. And so today's guest speaker, Sven Gade, is a frequent speaker in Daniel's courses. And so Daniel liked it so much, he felt it's important to share Sven's wisdom and experience with the larger audience. And so we decided to invite him as a guest speaker for the whole X-Culture community, and he graciously agreed. Thank you so much. And so today we will talk about teamwork. And since X-Culture is a team-based project, you know, that's a topic that everybody would benefit both with the X-Culture project itself, but you will be working in teams basically throughout your entire career. So the lessons you can learn today probably will serve you for many years, if not decades to come. So Sven, I'm going to turn the microphone to you. I'm not sure, Daniel, if you want to do a quick introduction perhaps, but otherwise, you know Sven very well. So if you want to say a few words, and we'll go on with the topic.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. So I just joined, so welcome everyone. Thank you very much, Vas, for this wonderful introduction. I think it speaks for the quality and for the engagement of X-Culture to bring, you know, such accomplished speakers of the caliber of Sven Gade into our you know, project, and having him address you and share his wisdom and his you know, vast experience on team leadership and team dynamics. So I'm very fortunate to know Sven Gade. He is you know, one of the most special person I have come across in my career. Vas mentioned it, that Sven is you know, a frequent guest speaker in my classes, usually at the graduate and executive level. This is where his experience is. His background is actually in math, very interestingly, right? If I'm not mistaken, he is a fellow German. You know, you probably heard my accent. Those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised in Germany, and so was Sven Gade. And he went to the University of Hamburg, and he got a degree in math, which is actually pretty good to have, you know, math skills in today's world. And, you know, he went on into business, and he has a very accomplished career in the logistics business, all the way up to the global vice president of DHL, which I believe is actually the biggest logistics company in the world, operating in almost every country around the world. So I think
I'm a customer. I receive DHL shipments at least once a week. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so, and you know, even though you may not see DHL that much within the US, but they're still working, you know, export import, I believe, in the US, but outside the US, they're bigger than FedEx and UPS. So it is a huge company, and Sven has left his mark you know, on that company as a global vice president. And I know that because I also know his former boss, the former CEO of DHL, who is also a frequent guest speaker. And sometimes they come in together as a tag team, and they're always doing a great job. And, you know, I only heard praise and really good things about, you know, Sven's career at DHL. And, you know, he is now running his own consulting or coaching company, I should rather say. And you know, what is very unique about Sven is that, you know, not only is he very accomplished in business and in his career, but also in his personal life. I can say that with a lot of confidence, you know, how he is interacting with my students, not only within the classroom, but outside the classroom, you know, giving his time for mentorship, giving his time to give back to the community, to help people, you know, achieve what he has achieved. So that makes him a very well-rounded person, not just a very accomplished business person. And, you know, I don't know if, I'm sure that Sven will use some metaphors or analogies or some stories, but he is also an ardent bicycler, you know, on his bicicleta, as they say in Spanish. You know, those of you, I know we have a lot of Latinos in this group as well. Isn't there a song by Shakira and Carlos Vives, right? Bicicleta. So I think Sven is probably listening to those Latin tunes when he's bicycling around Europe. And he can share this agenda with you, but I know he started somewhere, I believe in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, I believe, making his way to all the way to Istanbul, Turkey, which is interestingly the very first, you know, location where we had our X-Culture Symposium, I believe, right, Vas? And so next year, 2022, because of a quick stop, unfortunately, due to COVID, Sven is now resuming his bicycle trip throughout Europe, and he will arrive in Istanbul next year. He may talk about this, but not only, do I want to share that to give you an insight about Sven's hobbies and what he does in his free time, but he is using that bicycle trip to create awareness, to support, I believe, entrepreneurs in Africa, where a bicycle means so much more than for us and in our part of the world, where we in a way take it for granted, right? That we have those means of transportation easily available to us, but in Africa it means so much more to cross distances and to have social and economic opportunities. So he's creating awareness for this, which again shows you his character of how much he is giving back. So I'm very honored and I'm very humbled to know Sven, and I'm very fortunate to have a chance to give you that brief introduction. But I don't want to take more time away. But a warm welcome, Sven, and I know this is an online session, but you may want to do it metaphorically to give him a big hand, a big applause for being here, Sven. So wonderful to have you with us, Sven, and I'll take it over to you and to share your wisdom. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you very much, Vars, for having me here. Hello, everybody. I'm really excited being here with you today. And to your comment, I less listen to Shakira. I more listen to Queen. They have also a song about bicycle. It's a little bit older, maybe because of my age or so. I don't know. And I've seen there are also a few participants here from Turkey, Istanbul. Feel free to reach me out. When we reach Istanbul by bike, I'm happy to invite you for a dinner. So I think there has been already said a lot about me. I don't want to introduce myself. I just want to say X-Culture is such an amazing program. It offers students a wide range of opportunities to develop, not only academically, but also professionally. And today we want to focus on one topic, that is teamwork. I'm here to guide you through this webinar. You can make it very interactive by raising your questions in the chat box. And I think Vars and Daniel will help me to get to all these questions. I can't promise that we answer all of them, but we try to do our best. So the topic today is teamwork matters. And I hope this session, you will like this session, and the session will be helpful for you to deliver results with your teammates here at X-Culture or anywhere else. So let's step into the content. We all have some sort of experience to be on a team in sports, in school, in any kind of enterprise. But outside of sports, think about it. We don't get a formal education to become a good team player. We don't earn a degree, we don't have a license, we don't get a certificate, we just do it. And here are what I consider to be great qualities or qualities of great teams. These are the 5 topics. Listen to one another, agree on standards, embrace healthy conflicts, run effective meetings, drive positive change. I hope you're in. These are the things I want to cover here during our webinar here today. Let's start with the first one. And as little children, we demonstrate our inborn ability to listen. We ask all these curious questions. Why do you have to go to work, Mom? Why is it so cold in the fridge, Dad? Why do people get sick? And then we listen. We listen to understand the world which we are entering. We are entering to live in. When we then grow older, we somehow unlearn how to listen. Think about it. What makes it difficult to listen? What gets in our way? Let me share with you my observations. We assume to know what the other person is about to say and why he or she is saying it. We interrupt or finish the sentences of other people. We daydream or show some lack of attention. We focus on our own thoughts and perspectives. And we immediately judge what we hear and display an emotional or defensive reaction. This could be something like, hold on. This is not a good idea. We should not have started this discussion in the first place. Have you been in such a situation? I did.
Every day.
It happens, right? On top of that, we deal with all kinds of external distractions, you know, these magic devices with their bings and beeps and so on, that also takes us out of the listening mode. Let me give you a little bit of structure around this topic. There are 5 very distinct levels of listening. The first one is ignoring. This is not listening at all. When you look at your cell phone while somebody else is telling you something, then you are at that level. Level 2 is pretending. It's the verbal or physical indication of listening, but not listening to the words. You're nodding with your head, you're saying, uh-huh, but your thoughts are somewhere else, at least not in the discussion with the other person. This can happen to us after a busy day at work or studying. And when our spouse, our partner, our roommate starts to talk about the difficulties of his or her day, we're mentally still working or studying, and we're pretending to listen. Level 3, selective. This is to listen what you want to hear or an opportunity to interrupt. Do you eagerly wait for the very first opportunity to share your story while the other person is talking? Then you're on level 3. This can go somehow like this. Tell me about your meeting with Peter. And you ask somebody else, tell me about your meeting with Peter. And before that person is halfway done with answering your question, you already jump in and say, oh, I'm not surprised. He is so rude. Let me tell you what he did to me just the other week. And then you start to talk. You are on selective level. Level 4 is attentive. At this stage, you carefully listen for meaning. You get every word that is said, you pay attention and try to understand the other person's view. And finally, level 5 is empathic. This is accurately receiving the message from the sender's point of view. You understand not only the meaning of what people say, but also their feelings behind it. When you feel with somebody suffering or being happy when listening to this person's story, you are at the empathic level. I encourage you to listen with only one objective: to understand. In all sorts of conversations, only try to understand what the other person is trying to convey to you. Listen, really listen. Don't think about your answer. There's always time in between. It doesn't matter if you take 2 seconds after the other person is finished to give your answer. You don't need to think about it while you're listening. Don't listen to respond or to object or to critique or to convince. Just listen to understand. There is time later for arguing and all the other things. That brings me to our second quality of a great team: agree on standards. Let's start with a question. What is a team? Here is a simple definition. A team is a group of people who collaborate on related tasks toward a common goal. I think this is not super earth-shattering, but I think what it entails is not every group is a team. Some salespeople are rather a group of competitors reporting in the same boss. Also, take a group of people in a train. They have a common goal, but they don't collaborate. That's not a team. Well, I think you get my point. So teams exist to produce results. And for that, they need to have a work plan. I want to highlight these three topics here, these three items that are, I think, most relevant for you teams here at, for your work and your project teams here at X-Culture.
Exactly.
Was there a comment?
No, I was saying that exactly, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So deliverables is, and there are more. I just want to bring here a few highlights, and I guess this is something that has already been discussed. So I want to use that to lead to another point. But deliverables, be very clear what you want to accomplish at the end of your project. And this counts for any kind of project team and also for standing teams. It is your own definition of how success looks like. Then also align on the roles and responsibilities each of the team members has. It can be formal or informal. It would be something like, Peter is in charge of research and Sarah is our motivator. And equally important, put together a timeline and milestones. It is a necessity to keep everything on track. So those are pretty much the what, the who, and the when of your project. And most teams put a lot of attention on those points, but not so much on the how. How do we want to work together? So in this sense, a team charter is your powerful tool to cover that part. It's generated from your discussion of how you want to work together. You basically define your standards with a list of short agreements. It is your code of working together. These agreements, let me give you a few examples. These agreements can be rather very specific and behavioral, like we start our meetings on time, we give each other feedback, and we put our cell phones away when we talk to each other. Or they can be more qualitative, describing principles of how we want to treat each other. This could be something like, we assume positive intent. Mistakes are human. We look for the learning. We are aware of our impact on others. I hope that got clear. So let me show you 3 questions which will lead you to your team charter. And I encourage you, put it together. It's a fun exercise and it doesn't take too long. Typically, teams need about an hour to go through this process. So as each team member, in order to create the best teamwork possible, what do you need to count on? It gives everyone a clear sense that their needs have been heard. So that is the individual part. The next question is, in order to excel, what does this team need to do? This shifts from a purely personal level to the team as a whole. It defines the kind of culture the team wants to establish. At this point, I think you also have a great opportunity to learn about the various cultural backgrounds that you bring to the table. And that's such a rich discovery. Go there. And the final question and the extension from question 1 and 2 is, what agreements need to be in place for this team? And I typically, when I work with teams through that process, we land at 7 or 10 agreements that are important. And they are very different team by team. It is up to you what you consider being very important. At the end, everyone signs that document. I know that you live in the virtual world. You can do that with just everybody thumbs up and you take a picture. You can also be more formal with a digital signature. And if you're in the room, and this is an example here, this picture is a real live example. It's one of my first teams that I went through. And you see at the bottom, everybody signed. And they then did that in a nice PowerPoint way and typed everything. What I found in the cubicles were those handwritten copies of their team agreement. And that stayed with them, and that made a difference for them working together as a team. An implicit part of the team charter is accountability. And accountability, in my mind, is the key of effective collaboration. Results are achieved when everybody on the team holds himself or herself accountable for the promises made. At the same time, team members hold each other accountable to the just jointly defined standards and eventually to the team results. And I think you can define very simple. I mean, the teams I work with, they define very simple gestures like this to demonstrate, hey, we're off track. We're not following the agreements that we made. Not everybody is heard, or we don't do what we've promised we would do. And then quickly you have a discussion about that. So basically you elevate your discussion on a higher level, and you talk about how you work together in this very moment. So basically you take that time out as a referee in a match. So maybe this is a good point to stop quickly. Vars, any questions, maybe one or two that we can take already at this time, or otherwise I'd move on.
Yeah, there was one question about listening levels. You had that step diagram there, from ignoring to empathy. Do people normally monitor what stage they are at, and are they aware how they're listening? Any studies have you seen on that topic?
Well, I mean, everybody of us is different, but I would respond to that question as such. Once you have realized that you are not listening as you want, come up with an intention to do better. And then, I mean, behavioral change is like what we do in physics and sports. It doesn't come overnight. Just because I say I want to run a marathon, I don't run a marathon tomorrow. I need to train for that. Same with listening. Once you realize that you are a poor listener and you set yourself an intention, I want to be a better listener, then start your practice and observe yourself. And the next day, you will be a little bit better, but sometimes you're still off, and then next day better. And it's up to you to do a tracking. One of the great coaches in our times, Marshall Goldsmith, he suggests that you rate yourself at the end of the day on those behaviors that you want to change. So it could be, did I do my very best to be a good listener on a scale from 1 to 10? With that, you create your own metrics and you hopefully see an improvement over time. Behavioral change, I mean, there are different sources, but usually to really land a behavioral change takes at least a month, if not 3 or 6. So be patient with yourself and go for this marathon.
There is also a question from Nicole from the United States, whether or not a team charter is required for the X-Culture project. This semester, it's not required. We actually running a study now to see to what extent team charter improves or maybe doesn't matter in team performance. And so we've been alternating the semesters with and without the team charter to see if there is a difference. But I do strongly recommend that you as a team sit down and talk about your plans, standards. There was a very nice slide with the 3 questions to ask. The only thing that I would add to that slide, maybe the 4th one, how do you as a team react when something goes wrong? Like, for example, if
yeah, that's the accountability part. Good point.
Yeah,
good point.
Or sometimes we have situations where one of the team members perhaps, submits the section that is full of plagiarized material, or maybe not the good quality that the team expects. And so then obviously, what does the team do? And you might want to discuss that in advance. Will the team member responsible be held responsible? Will the team help? So that's something that you probably will face in one way or another. So you might want to discuss that as well in advance.
Yeah, very good point. And you're absolutely spot on. After you have the team charter, the question is, how do we want to hold each other accountable? And these are simple things. And as I've said, gestures to have a discussion about that and such things. Daniel, you had a comment?
I have a follow-up comment to this one. I'm also monitoring the chat, as Sven asked us, was it Daniel monitoring the chat? By the way, I just want to give a little shout out to everyone who has put in some comments. And I took a quick count here. So we were up at almost 250 students, more or less. And I counted 17 countries. So we have, that's based on the chat comments. I know Vas probably has some statistics, but I've seen that we have 17 countries from 5 continents. So besides the United States, as a little shout out, we have India, Russia, Pakistan, Singapore, Egypt, and Asia. We have Estonia, Ukraine, France, and Turkey. I count them all as European. We have Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. In Africa, we have Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia. I knew we have some Latinos here who know Shakira, right? And of course, everyone else knows Queen, Sven. But what I would like to do is, I think Finland, look at this, woohoo, and Poland. So this is what I wanted to achieve by mentioning those countries. So those of you who are from any of those countries I did not mention yet, just put it into the chat, which is an easy way to warm up your fingers, and to just put in hello from Jamaica, Brazil, Haiti. Look at this. Now everyone comes in.
Wow.
Kind of warms up. Look at this. United Arab Emirates. I hope we have some Australians here down under. Where are my Aussies? Okay,
they must be sleeping by now. It's like 10 p.m. there, right?
Some of them are up 24/7. Some of them are up 24/7.
Well, we have Singapore here at this late hour. That's great.
Everywhere.
And,
Ethiopia.
Malaysia.
Yes.
So Ethiopia. My brother lived in Ethiopia for 5-6 years. I visited that country. Great stuff. Excellent.
So that's what I wanted to do. So, but here's my follow-up question. Here's my follow-up question on the team charter. And this little chat exercise, guys. Now that you type in your countries, feel free to type in any questions you have while Sven is talking, and Vas and I will keep track, and then we'll ask them whenever we have a chance. But given that the team charter is not required, I know sometimes, Vas, we require it and it's kind of built into our schedule. But now what we do, and Sven, I think we talked about this, this is actually the first week of X Culture for our late season in the second half of 2020.
Essentially the first day, not the first week. So the teams were formed
the second
yesterday.
day, right? Yeah, So actually the very early first week, right? The second day. And the question here, Sven, the idea is that in that first week of the project right now, students around the world are encouraged to collaborate, to chat with each other, to get to know each other. And they have to do a couple of surveys this upcoming Thursday. And I'm looking at US Eastern time right now. So this upcoming Thursday by midnight, US Eastern time, they basically have to indicate whether they got in touch with everyone. And then by this upcoming Sunday, they just want to share whether they have actually communicated by learning about each other a little bit. But what do you think should be the best way to start the discussion about a team charter, and what would be the best timing, do you think, to finish this up? I assume probably before you start any real tasks, right? But maybe you have some advice for those teams who, even though it's not required, want to voluntarily put together a team charter based on your good advice.
That's a very good question. When it's too early?
Well, I think the universal answer to this question is it depends. It depends on the people on the team, how you feel about it. There is no right or wrong. When you feel it helps you to get better off the ground and get into your race, if I may call it like that, then do it at the beginning. I've done it with teams that work together for 10 years and never have one, and they took it, embraced it, ran with it. So, the sky is the limit. Go for what feels right. But I think before you go to the deep end of the pool of the X Culture project, I think it is very helpful to have it. To do it at the end of the X Culture project is maybe good then for anything what you do after that, what wouldn't help you here with X Culture. So I think maybe rather in the first third is recommendable, but it totally depends on you. May I move on with the content, and we can go along with more questions later on. So my third quality of great teams is embrace healthy conflicts. The question is, do you like conflicts? Yes, no, maybe not. And maybe because we're afraid of any emotional reaction, we are raised to be polite. And we are biologically wired to get along with those people in our tribe. So we often try to avoid conflicts and think they are something bad. Instead, we better address disagreements that interfere with our work here at X Culture or anywhere else. When I speak about a conflict, I mean a situation in which your point of view is different from another person's point of view, and you need to have a common understanding or a solution is needed. If you don't like my shirt, but I do, we don't have a conflict because we don't need to agree whether this is a nice shirt or not. However, if you and your teammates have different opinions about your goal, the goal of your project, or the methods of working, you certainly have a conflict and you better address that. Why are conflicts so common in our lives? Well, because not two individuals have exactly the same expectations or desires. Conflicts are part of our being together. Where there are people, there are conflicts. So in order to better handle conflicts, the two researchers, Thomas and Kilman, identified the following 5 modes of stepping into conflicts. They go from low to high on the 2 axes of assertiveness and cooperativeness. Let me go through them here one by one. First, competing. I do everything to win my own position. This is pushy, pushy, pushy. Accommodating. I neglect my own concerns to satisfy yours. We do it your way, boss. That's okay. Avoiding, we neither pursue my concerns nor yours. We basically don't do anything. Compromise, we find an acceptable middle ground that partially satisfies both of us. Nobody really gets what he wanted. Nobody really loses so much. And then collaborating, we find an alternative solution that satisfies both of us. If we are talking about 2 people being in a conflict, it can be, of course, the entire team. Now, I'm sure you have already practiced all of those 5 modes, but maybe more often than not, subconsciously. So before we look once more at those 5 different modes, what is the best mode of handling the conflict? Well, let me know. No conflict mode is right or wrong. We have some preferences. There is even an assessment behind that research. So that finds out what is your favorite or preferred way of handling conflicts. But each mode has its downside. It can create problems, and each mode can be effective if used appropriately. I want to illustrate that by going through the following scenario with you. One of your teammates wants to delay an important deadline. Under which circumstances would you apply a certain mode of conflict handling? Let me run that through you together with you. So competing is good in case the whole project is at risk when the deadline is not met. So in emergencies. And I use this example, I hope you can then extrapolate that in any kind of other life and work situation. Accommodating, it's good, for example, when your colleague has an important private situation to take care of, when the issue is more important to the other person or the relationship is more important than the conflict itself. Third one, avoiding. Avoiding is good if you want to gain more info. In this case that we were discussing, you decide to shift the deadline or not when you know more about whatever is relevant to make that decision. So also no action makes sense under certain circumstances. Compromising could mean in our example to delay the deadline not by 2 hours as required, but only by 1. This is a typical mode that we apply when there is little time. We just find a middle ground and go with that. It's not necessarily the best to find a compromise. It depends on the situation, as I've said. Then we have collaborating, and that could be in the given situation that we develop a better plan and in terms of deliverables and time schedule. And this mode is best to get everybody's buy-in, but it also takes most likely most time, so which we don't always have. So I hope that helped you to understand how these modes work in this very tiny little example, and that there are ups and downs for each of those modes.
Sven, if I may add, we have a team of professors who are testing at this time how these different conflict resolution modes or preferences affect team dynamics. And so all last year, so for several rounds of X-Culture, we've been measuring every student's preferred conflict resolution mode and then what they actually used in their team. And so the data are being analyzed now. So we want to see if some of these are more effective as the theory suggests, and if so, to which extent. So hopefully by the end of the semester, we may have some results to share with the students, and then maybe even provide some, empirical evidence, not only recommend, but actually show you by.
No, I mean, I would definitely also be interested to hear more about it. The point that I want to make here is, whatever the research will say, the important point is that conflicts are opportunities to improve your collaboration. Don't shy away from that. So that's the very first step. Talking about the conflict, the elephant in the room, can lead to better solutions. Yeah. It's a little bit of a question of mindset. Just that point, Vas, then I hand over to you. For me, it is a question of mindset. Just because somebody sees something differently doesn't mean this person is wrong. It's just a different perspective. And that is the opportunity to learn from that other person. Vas, over to you.
Yeah, there is also a question from Chris Roulard related to conflicts. Can they be good? And so the early track participants already know that, but the late track participants will start seeing that next week. So in the weekly progress surveys, we always have a question: how many conflicts and misunderstandings your team experienced last week? And so when we started doing that, we would simply ask about conflicts in general. And so we were surprised to see that actually conflicts weekly, but correlated positively with performance. And we were like, that's strange. We thought conflicts actually create a negative effect. And so now for a couple of years, and you will see those who are the new students, now we ask you how many conflicts you had related to the sort of basically interpersonal relationships, then related to the process and related to the task. And so that's where we see the difference. Usually we see the conflicts related to the task or process. So when you argue about the best answer to the question, when you argue about the best procedure to get to that answer, actually it relates positively to your performance. But the interpersonal conflicts, so when you start arguing about each other's personalities and call each other names, that's the one that we see that it's negatively related. So conflict in general doesn't have to be good or bad, but it's the kind of conflict, constructive, destructive. That's where you start seeing the difference.
Yeah. And I think that is where Chris leads us with that question, which is a whole new complex. And I'm not prepared to cover that here. Maybe a topic for another webinar is when you get then into the emotions around a conflict, then a conflict can become negative. As long as we stay rational and exchange our opinions and try to find the best solution and the best way going forward, I think a conflict cannot be wrong. Why do we not like conflicts? Because of maybe the emotional effects around that. And that is a hard nut sometimes to crack. But there's, and Vaz knows that also, a lot of research out there. I wanted to stay in the frame of the presentation. We can cover that another time. So here, to make my last point, on the conflict, somebody else might see something that you don't see, which is nice. I mean, if you see it from that point, you are right, the other person is right. Just try to understand the other person. So ask questions and use what we've said before, your active listening skills, to just be curious, to understand, and then you can still conclude on whatever it is. So I encourage you to embrace the very next conflict here in your team at X Culture. Choose your conflict mode wisely and use the perspective of your fellow students to find the best positive outcome. Let me move on. Our fourth quality of a great team is run meetings effectively. So, and you don't need to put that in the chat. You can, but you don't have to. My question to you is, for your own self-reflection, how was your last meeting here at X Culture or anywhere else? How did you feel in this meeting? Here is a little bit of business reality from the US. On average, there are 17 million meetings every day. 9 out of 10 people are daydreaming in meetings. 60% of attendees take notes to appear listening. These are pre-COVID numbers, and I don't believe the problem has changed. That's my personal opinion. It only got worse. No matter what, the important question is, what can you do to make your meeting engaging? So, first of all, meetings need to be planned. It sounds simple, but have it on your list. Here are a couple of points to take care of. A meeting without agenda is a no-go. You need to have an agenda for your meeting. Otherwise, you go into the fog. And it also includes to be very clear with your teammates, what is the outcome of that meeting? Why do we get together in the first place? So that's point number one. Then time is of essence. Limit the agenda items. The first thing that you can drop is pure info sharing, that somebody is, without any further explanation, reads a text or PowerPoints to the others, is not very helpful at all. You can address that as pre-read or pre-work in any kind. I also what worked well for me is to have the agenda items in the sequence of their priority. In case you run out of time, at least you covered the most important items before you discharge your meeting. Then about the meeting itself, I strongly recommend here the following points. Start your meeting on time, close your meeting on time. People have also other obligations. People will run away, and people will not respect the time if you don't do that with the agenda that you run. And I think there is a simple tool, which is not very often used. Make somebody of you a timekeeper, somebody who takes care that we arrive at destination in time. Somebody else leads through their team. I like to start meetings with a quick check-in, something like, what was the highlight of your last days? It helps people to connect on the personal level, and it engages everybody right away in the discussion. I want to refer to what we just said. Meetings should be about solving problems and finding consensus. Make sure that everybody is heard around the topic. Help each other to stay focused, and don't judge any idea that is brought up in the discussion during this creative part of the process. Judgment is also needed when you make decisions. I want to speak about that in a minute. But as long as you are finding the solutions, you're in this very creative part, don't judge, just listen, just get things on the table. At the end of the meeting, also that is so important. At the end of the meeting, agree on the next steps, be clear about the actions and who is responsible for what. I have a colleague who says, even in virtual meetings, if you look at people's faces, you can already see whether an action is done or not, because the body language tells you how much he or she is committed. Rather ask this question, hey Sven, are you ready to take that action? Will you have it done by next Friday? And then it is time to talk about that. So be clear on that. At the end of a meeting is also a good time to step back and look at your team charter and ask yourself, how far did you run the meeting in line with the team charter, the frame that you set yourself? A lot of teams struggle with decision-making, and it is in very many instances not clear how decisions are made within a team, within a meeting. Here is a simple but very effective technique, and this is how it goes. Thumbs up means I agree and fully support the decision. I have one more reservation. Some thumbs sideways means I have one or two more reservations, but I don't want to hold off the whole process. I will support the decision. And then last but not least is thumbs down. That means I don't or I can't support the decision. We have further discussion. We need further discussion about that topic. But just during the process, ask people for their vote by thumbs, which helps you to get earlier to a landing, because very often we drag on too long to get everybody to a full commitment. Maybe some thumbs sideways is already good enough. So I just wanted to leave that here with you. It is just one option that you can use. There are many others. The most important thing is when you here at X Culture or anywhere else, when you leave your meeting, you need to be aligned. Everybody needs to support the decision that is made. It is such a waste when people leave a meeting and then they say, well, we decided X, but I think Y is better. This is not team play, all right? So just wanted to make that point. And I have one more to go. It doesn't take too long. Was I suggest that I run this here and then we open again for questions.
Yeah,
so
Sven,
my last,
sure.
Yeah.
Sven, sorry to interrupt, but there's one question in the chat which directly relates to what you just said. So I think it might be good to at least quickly bring it up. By the way, as a quick count status update, so I'm counting 36 countries now. Very good. So everyone who's typing in their country names, so we're up to 36 countries, and we have Indonesia in there now, which is fairly close enough to Australia, so we can almost bring the Aussies in, right, Vas, and say almost 6 continents. So, but we'll count them as Oceania, I guess, and keep them in there. But the question we found here is that Caleb actually asked, what is the one thing that I could do to save my teammates time? And he says that most of them are from different countries and most of them have different time zones. So I think Sven, gave you a partial answer by saying start your meetings on time, end them on time, to be sensitive of their time zones. And I think the idea about, thumbs up and, thumb sideways and thumb down is that you can, if you have to make decisions rather than drag them out, to have certain action items, say, here are the decisions we need to make. Think about the upcoming decision for you, what challenge you want to pick, right, as a team. So you have to pick one of those challenges which are posted, and you cannot drag this discussion out for weeks because you have a certain deadline. So I think, if you want to find some type of team consensus, I think the idea with those thumbs ups and down and sideways would be good. But is there anything based on what you just said, Sven, to save the team time, to be more, and this is a very German kind of thing. I think the Germans perfected this. We have very structured and disciplined team meetings. But what can you do in in that diverse international, different time zones, Zoom environment to kind of, really keep on track, keep on time. Is there anything else you might want to share with Caleb and our participants?
I'm happy to refer back to what I've said, and that is, in the very first instance, do we need that meeting anyways? Maybe we can agree on email. I mean, I refer to 70 million meetings a day. Some of them are certainly not necessary, and they come because we meet every Tuesday. And I'm not against reoccurring meetings, but sometimes we have these reoccurring meetings of 1 or 2 hours, and there's not very much to be said. So that's point number one. Is the meeting necessary, yes or no? And then also keep it short. I typically wouldn't run a meeting more than 1 hour, at least here in the virtual state. And I ran global meetings, and we always had a meeting for 1 hour. We never went longer, and we had the agenda items in sequence of their priority. And if we covered the first 3 items and the fourth couldn't be made anymore, well, tough luck, then it was postponed to next week, and everybody had that responsibility. So it was the carrot and the stick at the same time, if you want. The carrot is we end on time. The stick is if we don't get through it, we need to discuss this same item the next time. So that would be my simple answer to that.
If I may add 2 techniques that I've seen, and I'm not sure they're equally effective, but some companies have stand-in meetings where everybody stands, not sits. And I've even heard that some companies do stand on one leg meetings. So the meeting goes while you're standing on one leg, just kind of to force you to be, to get tired and want to get out of this. So it kind of discourages unnecessary discussion. So I'm not sure if it's a good idea to stand on one leg if you want to, but something to think about. An interesting and more serious technique, I hear that Amazon, Facebook, and some other companies now do meetings in a sort of not a presentation discussion format, but all presenters are supposed to show up with a sort of presentation written up in plain text on one page. Then everybody sits and reads carefully, and then they discuss. So not the traditional method where, one person presents and everybody sort of half listens, half checks emails.
That's a good point.
Facebook. So I haven't seen that, but several people suggested that maybe what we should do at the conferences, maybe that's what it is. So, we come to the conference and instead of presenting the paper, if there is a one, page summary, read it.
Good point.
Do you have any questions? So I don't know. But
thanks for bringing that in.
The serious question I have for the presenters. So you are from Germany, both of you. And you mentioned a few times that it's a very German way. We do have people here, I see, for example, from Colombia, we see where I teach sometimes, and I know that their concept of time is very different. So when we take a break between, the half of the session, we kind of, well, let's meet soon back. So, it's not the, so do you think some of these rules may be very much sort of culturally bound or may work better in some cultures than in others?
Yes, and that's why I think the discussion about the team charter is so important, because if people are fine to discuss for 2 hours, then let's have 2 hours meetings. If everybody likes that, why not? If we want to have a drink while we, or coffee or soft drink while we have together and have some private talks, well, then be open to that. There is no firm recipe for success. I think you said it, Daniel, we have 36 countries here around the globe. Everyone comes with the background of his country, his childhood, her childhood, into the team, and then you need to find the right mix. There is no rule that works for all. Let me quickly, before we run out of time, I would like to, and then I'm happy to stay a little longer, but I want to cover the content before we get here to the half-hour mark. So the last point that I want to talk about is drive positive change. And it is something which is very, very simple. Teams are living systems. Things happen and not everything can be planned. Therefore, over the course of the project, you can ask yourself these questions. Firstly, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well are we doing in terms of working together as a team? Rate yourself 1 to 10. then ask you, how well do we need to be doing on a scale to 1 to 10? And usually that creates a little bit of a gap. And then you have a discussion about how can we close the gap. Everybody shares his or her ideas, and then you pick one idea. For instance, we need to be more respectful. Let's say that's the outcome. And then you continue and define the behaviors that you need to demonstrate and that you're committed to. That is the constant, if you want the Six Sigma approach on the behavioral level. It doesn't cost a lot. This is simple. This is something, I mean, to find out how big the gap is and put the things on the table all together, maybe a 20-minute discussion or so. And then you just try to improve it and remind yourself to be more respectful, as I said in the example. Now, there is one thing that I would recommend to add to that, to follow up the exercise with something that is called feed forward. This is how it works. Everybody on the team picks one behavior that he or she would like to improve. It can be simple as what we said before, I want to be a better listener. They then describe that behavior to randomly selected teammates. Let's say Sarah just shared this with Peter. I want to be a better listener. Next, Sarah asked Peter for feed forward. 1 or 2 suggestions that help Sarah to get better in this selected behavior. Sarah is not supposed to comment on the suggestions or critique them that Peter gives her. She just says, thank you, Peter. Then they go the other way around. Peter shares what he wants to improve in terms of behavior, and Sarah provides feedback, 1 or 2 suggestions that are aimed to help him to improve that behavior. After Peter thanks Sarah, then they meet with other teammates and go through the process again until the exercise is stopped. So think about it. How would that help you in your development as a professional, as a student here in the X-Culture environment? When I asked others to describe their experiences after this exercise, their comments were almost very, very positive. They used words such as great, useful, helpful. One of the most commonly used words has been fun. So I want to close on this positive note here. Best of luck to all of you. I hope your experience with X-Culture is a lot of fun. And thank you for being with me here today. I'm happy to stay a little longer for more questions, but I wanted to make sure that I don't only talk about closing on time, I close on time and I stay longer for those that want to stay with us. And I have another half an hour for question and answers. Over to you, Buzz.
And you're right on
first
time.
of all, we should give him a big hand. We should give him a big hand, you know, because Sven stayed on time. He's not just only talking about it, but I'm looking at my clock. You know, it is actually, you know, just a few seconds before 10:30 Eastern Daylight Time. So Sven is actually implementing what he's preaching. I just have a couple of quick comments, Bas, if you allow me. And first of all, you know, thank you very much, Sven. I know there are some questions out there whether it's possible to share the slides. You know, we can decide this. I know, yes.
This is thumbs up, right?
Thumbs up, and you know, you see again, you know, Sven's suggestion about the thumbs up and sideways and down. He is implementing his suggestions as well. So you all get the slides and you have a recording as well. I just have a couple of quick comments. I know Sven wanted to finish up his discussion, but the time concept, Vas, you mentioned, right? The concept of time. I think this is very, very important to understand. Of course, Germans and Sven and I, we can sing a song about this. We have a different concept of time than in Latin America. And Vas tells, you know, mentions Colombia, and I teach in Latin America too, so I know of this too. So I think the idea is, and I was actually on the way to the university this morning, very interestingly, just invited to a dinner party by a Bolivian friend of mine who lives in the United States. And when these kind of situations happens, I always ask my first question, hora latina or hora alemana, which means German time or Latin American time. And he said hora alemana, which means you got to be on time because there will not be many Latinos. There will be mostly Americans and they want to eat on time. But if you go to Colombia, Vas knows, if you're invited to a dinner party at 8 o'clock, people show up at 9, 9:30. So the idea here is if you show up on time, that's actually impolite because people are still preparing for their dinner party. They're still cooking, right? So they're kind of, why are you here? So the idea, I think, is, that you can build this into your team charter so that you can say, what time concept do we want to use as a team? And that could, of course, differ based on, the composition of the team, right? Or whether it's more, these people who live like hora latina or those who are following more hora alemana. But there was that one question, Sven, and I want to ask to be sensitive of those questions. And it was asked by Seth. No, it was not Seth. Hold on. It was by Frederick. He said, in a situation where one team member opposes the team's decision and is not willing to support the team, which is the best way to resolve conflict? And I think Sven already gave you a partial answer by saying, you got to stay on time. You do thumbs up, thumbs down. You have kind of a team consensus. But I believe Frederick has, maybe based on experience, that one team member is always trying to monopolize and maybe speaking up again and again. So how can you, in a nice diplomatic way, Sven, kind of bring that team member in line, with a maybe group pressure or any tools you may be able to share?
Well, I think this is a tough one, and that has multiple facets, but thanks for bringing it up. I think in such a case, certainly we talked about that earlier, I would think the discussion about a team charter early on would help, because then you have the frame and say, hey, Peter, and I always use Peter and Sarah, hey, Peter, we discussed that, and this is how we work. It's also, sometimes the majority takes the decision or makes the decision, and everybody else is buying in. If it then doesn't work, I would recommend maybe one of the team members, and that is my personal approach. And I'm a coach, I'm an executive coach, I'm a team coach. But what I would do is then, let's say Peter is the one who's hitting the brake, that somebody else of the team sits down with Peter and speaks about that, what is going on. Most likely, there is something beneath the surface that you need to find out. We talked about emotions beforehand. Something is not ticking right for Peter, and it is more comfortable maybe to share with one person and dig a little bit deeper and find out the resolution. And it can be maybe something completely unrelated, and I'm making here assumptions, a private problem. I think this is also something not to run away from, but it needs a special treatment. And I think every case is different. But I would take it one-on-one with one of the team members that feels most comfortable, and then have this 1 hour discussion, which might go very deep on the personal side.
One thing I would add, that it is true there may be no perfect solution to problems like this, and there will be problems like this. But the whole purpose of X-Culture is to allow you to experience these kinds of situations now as a student, when even if you make a mistake, even if something goes wrong, your team will still be okay. You will not lose millions of dollars. And so don't get upset when you experience these kinds of situations and problems. The whole purpose of this project is to allow you to deal with, or to learn how to deal with them now, so that when you see them again, and you will see them again as part of your real job, so to speak, you will be a little bit more prepared. So don't start calling me or somebody else when something goes wrong. We will provide help if needed, obviously. But again, recognize that these kinds of challenges, that's sort of something that we kind of hope you will experience, because if you will have a perfect team where everybody loves everybody, everything goes smoothly, everyone's on time, everyone's working very hard, remember that will never happen again. And while you will have fun during this project, you will probably not learn a lot. So I kind of hope that you will experience some of these problems.
Yeah, and some of the standing teams with professionals that are very, very long already in their jobs, they struggle with that as well. But it's also, and I come back to my point, they shy away from this difficult discussion. And in the business world, you usually have a leader that can address that, but it not always has to be the leader. Maybe Sarah, the colleague of Peter, is the best person to address that and find out the solution for yourself. You can always reach to the next level manager. In this case, it would be Vaz or somebody of his team. But you delegate upwards something that you can handle yourself. And I'm talking also about the business context. But it's a great exercise. So see it as such. Now you have your, pardon to say that, your sandbox in which you can play this. Later on, it's real life, and it's maybe even a little difficult. So it's a good training course.
Exactly the purpose, yes. One more thing that I want to sort of corroborate the very first point that you said, Sven, related to listening. So we've done some research, in fact, quite a lot of research on multicultural versus monocultural teams. And so what we see again and again, and we've seen that in other studies as well, but including culture studies, that international teams tend to be a little bit more creative and innovative. So you bring different ideas to the table. Everyone comes from a different sort of background, different economic system, different political system. You read different books, watch different movies. So there are more ideas, there are more knowledge pools, if you will, on the table. But one thing that we found in our research that is true only when the team members communicate. So communication is a very strong moderator. So when team members communicate and by extension listen to one another, that's when I hear that maybe the guy from Colombia has a different idea. Maybe the guy from Ghana knows something I don't know. Maybe the girl from Ukraine brought something that I didn't consider. So some teams, what they do is they divide up the workload by the report section, and they say, Daniel, you'll work on marketing, Sven, you'll work on HR, I'll work on, for example, logistics, and then the other Daniel wrote it here. So we'll work on, I don't know, certification. Let's meet the last day before the deadline. We will just copy and paste everything in one document, and we will submit it as a report. If you don't have communication, if you don't discuss each other's ideas and suggestions, if you do not check my math, so to speak, and do not voice your suggestions, if I don't listen to your input, then you probably will not be any more innovative than an individual person. So that communication and listening, that's where it's very important. And yes, sometimes maybe Sven will not be happy with my report section. He will say, from my German perspective, I don't think that's how you should approach the certification of this project. Maybe, he has some criticism. And so that's where the tricks, that's where the magic happens. So make sure that you have that communication in place, that you look at each other's work, that you are open to criticism and are willing to listen to your team members if they say that what you did maybe needs a little extra work. So that's the key.
And great point. I love it. And let me jump on that right away and then think about the common goal. We talked about the definition of a key of a team, and a team has a common goal, and the common goal should be helping you to bring everything under this one roof. If we have different opinions, we can fight about that, but at the end, we are on the same journey. We all want to go to Rome, and we can discuss forever the modes of transportation, but we want to be in Rome next Saturday. So, and then that also ultimately should define our discussions and decision-making.
There is an interesting question from an anonymous, adding the no name, but basically, would it be a good idea to rotate team leaders as the project progresses? We haven't done research on that, so just intuitively, is that a good idea? Like, maybe
absolutely.
weeks or so?
Absolutely. I like the exercise as such. And also, I think that is sometimes a misunderstanding that we find in the corporate world. Vaz is, let's assume here amongst us, Vaz is our leader, and Daniel and Sven are leaning back and say, he has to do all the leading and so on. It is a joint effort, and highly effective teams usually have a good sense of shared leadership. So definitely a good idea to train that and learn that here also through the X-Culture project. I like the idea.
Yeah, if you guys do that, let me know. I would like to know the results. Maybe it's a good technique and we should recommend it to all teams moving forward.
We have some students in Switzerland, Vaz, which is the Swiss political system, right? They don't have a president, they have a Swiss council.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rotating
they have a referendum on everything, right? So they'll have like, I don't know, 300 referendums every year.
Yeah.
And I recently had a situation with a client where the leader was also leading their team meetings, and in my coaching session with him, he concluded that it would make sense that he delegates leading the team meeting to somebody else, which helps him to be, first of all, not so present and all over the place. Secondly, observe the dynamics of his team and help better with the ultimate decision making. So that's just one example from the corporate world where a shared leadership approach has worked very well.
Yeah. One thing I will add again from an ex-culture administrative point of view. So we have here Karen Linden, who is in charge of our coaching program. And so we have several dozen students who participated in ex-culture in the past, did very well, wanted to stay in touch, completed additional 4 training modules on how to be an effective coach, and will serve this semester as coaches, as mentors to you. So if you do have some problems that you cannot resolve, or if you just need to talk to someone, there is a link in every message that you will be receiving for the weekly surveys. You will have that link in that message. It's also on the resource page. And you can ask for a coach, maybe, as I said, as a counselor to you personally, or maybe feedback on the work your team does, or maybe a conflict. So their job is not to do the work for you or solve the problem for you, but they will help you work as a team and resolve it. And so I'm not sure if you, Karen, want to say a couple of words about that, but help is available when needed.
Yeah, great. Thanks for this really wonderful presentation. It is something that all of us need to hear on occasion, and it's definitely a great start for the teams. I would say for the coaches, these are students, just like Boss mentioned, that they went through their experience. It wasn't perfect, but they really got a lot out of it, and they wanted to get a little bit more involved. So they go through a training program. So that could be something in the future you might want to look into yourself, but they get the opportunity to assist with any questions that you might have. So in a couple of weeks, Dr. Voss will share links with you where if you really have something that you'd like to bounce off of a coach, whether it's an idea on your project or we're really having a tough time collaborating with our time zones. We just can't quite get our meetings set or ... A coach will be there to answer your questions. It will be somebody from somewhere in the world, and they'll answer your request in about 48 hours. And so hopefully that's a nice peer support where it's somebody that's walked in your experience in the past and they can give you some advice.
And if you do well, maybe you can become a coach next semester. Sven, I would like to conclude. There is a series of questions. I skipped them during the presentations because they're not related to the topic directly, but several students asked about career advice. So you've had a very successful corporate career. You have your own business. You worked with people from all around the world. So if you had to start it over again, or for your kids, I guess, so what, because the students obviously, MBA, we have some EMBA, some MBA, and some undergraduate students here. So they will be graduating next year, another year maybe. And so they would like to get good jobs. They would like to have a career like you had. So what would you recommend they do? So any tricks and tips and suggestions on how to maximize?
Well, let me make you a confession. Let me start with a confession. My career was anything but a straight line. So I studied math, then I went to IT. From IT, got into IT for logistics. Then I stayed with logistics for quite some time. I've never been in HR. I've been in sales. I have been in warehouse operations as an executive. And now I work as a coach, and that is my passion. So starting to answer your question, I think what is really good is to know what is your passion? What are you passionate about it? And find clues. There are clues, and collect those clues, reflect on what you do, what you love to do, and how it connects maybe into the workspace. And that is not necessarily right away a job. It is what you love. You love to help people. You love to decorate. You love to help other people to solve their problems. You love to solve problems. So those kind of things are, I think, very important to know where you're passionate about. And then also be clear about what are your strengths, because where your strengths and your passion is matching, that is where your sweet spot is. of course, there must be also a job. So if you're passionate about art and you're a great artist, if you can't sell your art, that is maybe also a very short runway. But I think you get the concept as such. So that is what I would recommend. But I think also, and Daniel knows that discussion, it's about whether you want to grow wide or deep. And also there is no right or wrong. I know people that love to drill down to the bottom and know everything about one subject. And I mean, looking at my career, and I admit it was a bit of a coincidence, but I can now, or I base my work today on that I had such a rich and wide experience across industries, across cultures, across functions, that helps me, of course, now to work with executives and see all the, or help them in the situations that they face in their professional life. So this is maybe what I would give, and I think I would do everything again as I did, maybe a little bit more organized than I did, but it's amazing to have all these experiences and build on that.
One more question, if I may, related. So corporate or business owner? So some students are asking, is it a good idea to first get a job at the company, or should I try to start my own business right away? That's my aspiration. What's your suggestion? Because you had a corporate career before you went private, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think who said that, and I would agree with that. One of the prominent startup founders said, in your and just as an advice, this is not a rule, but in your early years of your career, go into a company where you can learn easier from others, and then so basically, maybe even the big companies that have a lot of learning opportunities for you, because there's so much knowledge around the table and the departments, around the workspace that you're working from, or in the business unit that you're in. So start there, and then gradually go into smaller entities, and then maybe at the end start your own business. By coincidence, that is also the way I did it. Well, I didn't start right away with a very big company. I was also in between in smaller companies. I worked for a consultancy before I went into logistics. But I think this is generally speaking the way to go. But of course, there's no rule without an exception. If you have the next freaking idea of an Uber for something, then you rather do that. I also coach an executive. He started his own company, by the way, in Africa. He is 31 years old, and his company has a worth of multi-hundred millions. So the guy certainly would give you different advice and say, have a good idea and run for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for participation. There are a few technical questions related to X-Culture. The companies, you as a team choose the company, you can do it anytime. When can we ask for a coach? Whenever you need it, just fill out the form. And when the teams will be fully formed. The first batch was formed yesterday, so the early track is almost over, but the late track, the first 800 teams or so were formed yesterday. We will be adding more students to some of the teams. So our goal is to have the teams of about 6 people plus or minus. So at this time, some are 6, some are 7, some are even 8, and some are only 4. And the reason for that is, again, there were some different requests by professors how the teams should be formed. But the teams that have only 14 members, you will probably get the 5th and maybe even the 6th one within the next day or 2. And so the teams will be fully formed probably by the end of the week. But then again, if you ask for more team members, we may be able to add more next week. Most teams will be happy with what they have. So contact the ones whose names you already have, and then give us a couple more days. Some countries, the semester starts a little late, so it may be another day or 2 before we have those names. Otherwise, thank you so much, Sven, for your time. Very informative. We will share the recording with your permission with the rest of the group, the cohort. And
I'll send it to you in the next hour. Yes.
I appreciate it. And thank you so much, Daniel, for arranging for this meeting in the first place. So thank you so much. Yes.
And bringing the energy to the room.
Yes.
Yeah, and thanks to you and thanks to Sven. If you allow me one final comment I have, since we are starting this season now, you know, Sven comes from a corporate world and all the consulting he does is results oriented. Okay, that I believe, Sven, let me know if I'm evaluating that wrong, but teams need to, you know, produce, right? They have to have results at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The nice thing for our X culture is that the primary objective is not necessarily results in the form of a report. It's giving all of you an opportunity to communicate, to collaborate, to interact across cultures. So whenever you run into team communication conflicts or you have discussions, that's actually a good thing, okay? You don't want to go out and say everyone knows what they do, everyone does their work, you go on and you never communicated, but you get an A or a 1 or whatever your highest grade is, a 7 on that written report. So for you, going through the process is the primary purpose of what X culture is all about. And I'm so happy that Sven's advice from the corporate world, you know, has given you some tools and some hints and some you know, advice of how to do it, you know, in X culture teams as well. But never lose track of that primary focus, right? The process, the communication, the collaboration, the interaction, that is why X culture exists. And the written report is a means to the end of achieving this. This is not an end in itself, okay? So that is my final word. I know we're late in time, but thank you so much again, Sven. Thanks for to Vaz and Karen, you know, for being part of this panel, and good luck to everyone in this upcoming season, okay? Go X culture.
Yes, X culture, yes. Bye-bye, everyone. Yeah, all right, yes. Maybe we can snap a picture or something. So, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
right.
next time.
Anyway, good night,
Talk
everyone.
soon, everyone. Take care. Stay healthy and well.
You too.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.